Started, I just want to say it's nice to see so many people here. Being part of this community has really helped me get through this, and I hope the same is true for all of you. And I hope that all you and all your families are healthy at this time. I just want to read one comment from the chat that I really agree with. This is from David. Another affirmation that getting Nika elected was time well spent. To that I say, hear, hear. So if you'll bear with me a moment, I'm just going to share my screen with you in a little slideshow.
Want to do the poll, Brian, or what?
Yeah, while I'm futzing around with this, yeah, Cole is going to ask you some poll questions about what area of our work interests you the most, and how involved you would like to be and are. Can everyone still see the poll despite the fact that I shared my screen? Okay, good. I don't get the poll on my end.
So you should see the poll on your screen, and it's asking you for your top peace and justice issue. And
I'm already in the nuclear disarmament working group.
Yeah, we're just trying to get a sense, Susan. And there's like 106, 108 people on. And
wow.
Yeah.
The second question is, do you participate in the MAPA working group that addresses your top issue? We got 23 votes so far.
Yes, we are a democratic organization.
So do I say yes, that I'm already participating?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But time is short, and I have to describe all of our areas of work in 15 minutes. So everyone, wish me luck. There's a lot that we do here at Mass.
You can probably go ahead, Brian, while this is up.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. This is our 2020 campaign plan and a description of our program efforts for hopefully our first and only Zoom annual meeting. So, as Susan was just mentioning, nuclear disarmament continues to be one of the most important areas of our work. It's really what we started on, and it's still extremely important. Efforts that are going forward right now are to support the Fund Healthcare Not Warfare program. You'll hear in depth about that later on. This is really an economic argument as to why we need to oppose the $1 trillion expansion of our nuclear weapons. These are weapons that if we ever use, will be done. So it's really a waste of $1 trillion. Along those lines, we are going to put no first use and back from the brink slightly on the back burner for now as we focus on the economic arguments because of the COVID crisis and how clear that makes things. Unfortunately, like so many events, the wonderful threat of nuclear war conference held at MIT has to be postponed. It was supposed to be held earlier this month, and for now, we're looking at the fall for that. Another effort of that group is going to be expand the work regionally, beyond just Massachusetts to include New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania as well. Ending war without end in the Middle East obviously continues to be one of our major efforts. Right now, in light of COVID-19, we are working to end sanctions on Iran. As I'm sure many of you know, Iran is one of the nations that has the most cases and most deaths associated with the coronavirus. And this has a lot to do with U.S. sanctions that are preventing medicine and medical equipment from getting in. So it's really an opportunity to redefine sanctions in the American minds. They're not a means of diplomacy. They are warfare by other means. Our Middle East Working Group is hosting a series of webinars. We will have one tomorrow at noon on Syria, featuring Jeff Klein and some voices from inside Syria as well as Syrian Americans. And we will plan future webinars, another on Iran, and touching all of these countries in the Middle East that we're so involved in. The Raytheon anti-war campaign, our work continues despite the virus. We just had a webinar yesterday with Professor Shireen Aladimi on the origins of the Yemen war. And unfortunately, we're not able to hold rallies, as I'm sure many of you are going through the same thing. But we have a wonderful slide presentation that is available to be shown for faith communities and schools. And once this is all over, we're going to expand our efforts on campus to make more connections with student groups. We've had a lot of luck with that. We have also launched a change.org petition encouraging Raytheon to use their ability in manufacturing to make ventilators and not bombs. It's another way to pressure them in light of this crisis and to get more people on board. Our peace work in Korea continues as well. As you know, the Korean War never officially ended, and now it is 70 years old. So we need to redouble our efforts to raise awareness of this issue and support a peace treaty to officially end the war in Korea. We're supporting Ro Khanna's HRES 152. We're having webinars to put a spotlight on Korea. While we can't all get together, those have been put on in partnership with Mass Korea Peace Campaign and Korea Peace Now. Held a very successful webinar with, I believe, over 200 participants, one of our most successful to date. Unfortunately, the lobby week had to be moved to virtual, but that will be going on from June 1st to June 5th. So we encourage people to sign up and participate in that as well. Latin America and Caribbean working group. This is very exciting. It's one of our newest working groups. It came about after a presentation put on by Sonny Robinson and Jean Gallo on the immigration crisis. As I'm sure many of you know, we're living through the biggest immigration and migration crisis since World War II. And yet, immigration issues are often treated as a domestic issue, when we all know that they are deeply connected to U.S. foreign policy, to sanctions, to interventions, to the drug war, to the arms trade. A lot of these people are fleeing violence done with weapons made right here in the United States, in some cases right here in Massachusetts. So we need to make those connections. Lift the Sanctions is a new coalition that's connecting Eastern and Western Mass. We've already hosted webinars on Venezuela and have an upcoming webinar on Venezuela and Cuba. We're also working to defend immigrant rights right here in the Bay State, supporting the Safe Communities Act and opposing ICE raids, and also demanding the release of those who are detained right now to stop the spread of the virus. We're also opposing U.S. support for coups, as we have seen in Bolivia and as we see threatened right now in Venezuela. Palestinian rights continues to be one of our main areas of work. We need to maintain the right to boycott. We just saw that in the State House, they attempted to pass a law that would really penalize people for using their First Amendment rights. And we were able to mobilize a great number of people to testify on behalf of the First Amendment and the right to boycott. It was extremely successful, and that bill is not continuing, so that is another success. We are also supporting the Palestinian Children's Bill by Betty McCollum to try and get more co-sponsors to restrict U.S. aid that is being used to detain children. We're also doing efforts at the state level, opposing legislatures from taking those junket trips to Israel. There's huge conflict of interest there. We're also opposing Massachusetts police departments going over to get training from the Israelis. Obviously, we feel that that is wildly inappropriate for them to be learning how to police here in Massachusetts from Israel, considering what they're doing. We're also working to expand coalition partners into a statewide group, and this is going to take a lot of effort, but we think it's going to pay off, and hoping to plan a conference next winter, early in 2021. The Fund Healthcare Not Warfare efforts, this is new, and I mentioned this a little bit before. We are lucky enough to have as our board co-chairs a professor of microbiology in Jonathan King, and a retired registered nurse in Rosemary Keene. So we're uniquely qualified to put on events explaining the coronavirus and how it relates to our work. So a series of webinars have been planned. They're going to be bi-weekly, and there's one tomorrow night at 7 p.m., and it will feature union organizers for hospital workers, frontline doctors, someone from the Mass Nurses Association. It's really going to be an all-star panel. I really recommend tuning into that. But this is an effort to make the connection between what we're going through right now and an effort to redefine national security. Our near $1 trillion military budget is not protecting us from the coronavirus, which has now killed over 35,000 Americans. So we need to use this crisis to reveal the vulnerabilities that we truly face and to reprioritize. It's an opportunity to do so. Along the same lines, supporting the people's budget and moving Pentagon spending to domestic needs. It's not just healthcare, it's public transportation, it's education, it's housing, it's the environment, and we need to move the money from the Pentagon. As you can see from this graph here, it's absurd. Our level of spending on the military is over half of our discretionary spending, and that just cannot continue. So we are going to be supporting the people's budget out of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which presents an alternative vision, which is important to have. And we're going to continue to support the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and taxes on millionaires, and then to oppose the horrible and unnecessary Trump tax cuts, which are just a giveaway to the rich. Our racial justice and decolonization group continues moving forward. They help us make sure that we remember that white supremacy and racial justice issues touch every piece of mass peace actions work. We all know that if we give even a moment's thought that racism is deeply connected with war and militarism around the world, and we believe that it's clear that one of the reasons that these endless wars are allowed to continue is because the victims of those wars are largely people of color, and that's unacceptable to us, and we are committed to changing it. So the Racial Justice and Decolonization Group is putting on study sessions. They just finished up reading How to Be an Anti-Racist. I believe they're going to continue that program of study. They are collaborating with the Poor People's Campaign to change our state flag and seal. The Indigenous Agenda, which Rep. Alugardo spoke a little bit about. That is a great effort and has advanced to the next level. So we need continued work to remove the stain from our state flag and seal. On a personal note, I I was ignorant to this fact. I think a lot of people were, but I've had to take down my flag, and I am eager to put up a new one that represents us well and does not discriminate against our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Peace and climate is another incredibly important area of our work, and really speaks to the intersectionality of all of these progressive issues. Just like the coronavirus, the threat of climate change is one that we have been talking about for a long time. But when it comes, we're afraid that people are going to say, oh, we didn't know. We weren't ready for it. Just like we're seeing with this coronavirus. So we need to make the connection between militarism and environmentalism. And they're there for us to make. The Pentagon is the single largest emitter of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, single institution in the world. And its role, and this explains our presence in the Middle East, is to maintain our reliance on fossil fuels. So we need to include that in our work. And we need to work with wonderful groups that have sprung up to organize around this, to push for a Green New Deal in partnership with the Sunrise Movement, with Extinction Rebellion, with 350 Mass. There are lots of great groups, and as I said, it really speaks to the intersectionality. Progressives need to come together so we can achieve our goals, and peace and climate go hand in hand. Our peace voter efforts, as I'm sure many of you know, we do endorse candidates and we try and push them in the right direction to institute the policies that we want. We are dedicated to removing Donald Trump from office. He's an incredibly dangerous president, but also to elect progressives at every level. We need more like Rep. Elugardo in our state legislature. So we're going to be endorsing progressive candidates to run for office right here in Massachusetts as well. We're supporting Ed Markey for Senate, as I'm sure many of you know, a champion of nuclear disarmament, and also the author of the Green New Deal in the Senate. So we are working right now to gather signatures for him and to make sure that everyone knows that he is the progressive candidate in this race. We will support House incumbents Ayanna Pressley and Jim McGovern, who have been champions for peace, as we've seen from a litany of their votes on military budgets and specific issues on policy, and challengers, including Alex Morse, who's out in Western Mass. He's challenging one of the most powerful and most conservative Democrats in our delegation, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And he's got a really good shot. Hassan Lecky, who's someone who has spoken at multiple rallies of ours, is running to replace Joe Kennedy in an open race. That's very exciting. And I know I already talked about the state reps, but it's incredibly important for one more reason. That's our farm team. State legislatures, putting progressives in those seats is going to ensure that the next generation of people in Congress have progressive values. Also, legislative action, also another part of our legislative and political committee. We work at the state and at the federal level. So last year we had 9 bills. We put together some great lobby days. Folks came out and gave testimony at hearings. We really got our issues heard at the state level. And I thought it was a great success, but there are lessons for us to learn from that. And we need to take those lessons to heart and start planning for our next foray into state politics. But we're also supporting certain pieces of congressional legislation at the federal level, and calling for op-eds and letters to the editor and lobby visits in order to get support for that legislation. We're also working with other groups like Mass Alliance and Our Revolution to emphasize peace issues as well. And we are trying to build our legislative and political committee to do more of this important work. On an organizational level, this is really thanks to the work of John King, who has developed an entire plan for this upcoming year on how to build our working groups and make them stronger and more focused. This is something that I really want to hit on. I'm sure all of us were worried about how our work was going to continue when we couldn't meet together. But I have to say that I am incredibly proud of how Mass Peace Action has responded, and that means how you have responded. We rely on volunteers, and I have to say right now we're doing more events than ever. And that speaks to the response and how hardworking you all are. And I just want to say how much I appreciate it and how proud I am of all of you. So we're developing a program committee so we can work together. So we're amplifying our efforts and not stepping on each other's toes. And we're also working with our national organization to make sure that we're helping the other affiliates and we're making our organization more democratic. That's incredibly important to us. And last slide, I know I've gone on, but there's a lot of work to cover. Communications, because you know, if we're doing all this great work, it doesn't matter much if we don't get the message out. So communications is extremely important. So we want to train more people on every action, which is how you get those very slick emails filling up your inboxes that I know everybody loves. And we also want to update and relaunch our website. It's pretty good, but it could always be better. We've developed an e-newsletter to supplement our print newsletters that are going out 3 times a year to keep everybody updated on what we're doing. And we're going to improve our social media and allow members to participate more in that as well for event promotion. And also focus on our relationship with the press. As I said before, organizing op-eds, letters to the editors, building closer relationships with the press, including radio and television appearances. So that's a lot of work, and we're going to need your help to do it. So I have no doubt that together we're going to be able to push our peace agenda forward. But I want to hear from you and take questions. I'm sure I've gone on far too long, but please forgive me because as you see, no shortage of work to be done or work being done. So at that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see, do we have some questions in chat?